Welcome to this Whole Life Action Hour. I'm Ocean Robbins, your host, and I'm thrilled that you're here today because we're going to wake up to the power of sleep. You know, there's an old Irish proverb that says a good laugh and a long sleep are the best cures in the doctor's book. But for a lot of people, the busier or the more stressful life gets, the less restful our sleep becomes. And that can easily lead to fatigue and set the stage for low moods, for burnout, even for chronic disease. The good news is the latest research tells us there are proven steps you can take to improve your sleep, and that is why we are here today. Before I go any further, let me say that this is nothing you hear today is medical advice. We're going to be sharing coaching and our own best insights, but of course, always consult with a qualified healthcare professional for your medical issues and needs. That said, you're going to learn a lot today, and this event is a project of Whole Life Club, which is Food Revolution Network's ongoing membership community. And some of the questions that I'll be bringing to this interview come from Whole Life Club members. We are here today with Devin Burke. Devin helps high achievers and exhausted insomniacs get and stay asleep so they can wake up with more peace, more power, and more presence. He's a best-selling author, a speaker, a renowned sleep coach, and founder of Sleep Science Academy, which helps people stop suffering and start sleeping using a unique holistic approach that is based in science. Devin has inspired thousands of people to open their eyes to what's possible through creating new sleep, health, and performance habits and routines. I want to throw in a joke there when we talk about opening their live eyes to what's possible. They're also going to close their eyes at the right times. Devin, so good to be with you today.
Great to be with you, Ocean. Thanks for having me to talk about this important topic.
Yeah, well, let's start off with the big picture of why is sleep so important for living a healthy and vibrant life? I mean, we all know it intellectually, but just land that for us for a second.
Yeah, I mean, you started to touch on it in your introduction. There's not an aspect of our life that isn't positively impacted when we get enough sleep, enough quality sleep, or negatively impacted when we don't. So if we can talk any important area from our emotional health, longevity, from physical recovery, from creativity, everything is connected to sleep, and sleep's connected to everything else. So a lot of people are totally, intellectually, like you said, they get it. Oh, sleep's important. I should sleep 8 hours, but it's the first thing they go, and it should really be the last thing because it has such a drastic impact on literally all of the areas that are important to us.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of folks, I remember when I was young, a friend of mine who was really a high performing guy, he was like, I'll sleep when I'm dead. He said, I want to do stuff. I've got things to do with my life. And sleep is like a necessary evil so I can get back to work. Can someone be really highly productive and busy and also sleep well?
Absolutely. This is one of the biggest sort of myths that people have is that, you can't really be a high performer if you're prioritizing sleep. And really the opposite's true. Sleep and performance are directly related. You make better decisions when you're well slept. This is a really important topic to talk about because people just don't understand that when you're underslept, your brain, you're just not operating at the same capacity. So the decisions you're making, although they might seem like they're good decisions, they could be better decisions when you're well rested because your body is in a state of high energy, your body's in a state of high efficiency, and also you work through the emotional traumas of the day during the night. So oftentimes people are operating from a lower state of performance and they don't even realize it. This is why it's kind of dangerous because that lower level of performance and poor decision making actually seems like it's not there until you actually prioritize and protect sleep and you start to experience, oh my gosh, I have so much more energy. I'm making better decisions. I'm more emotionally stable. And then people can start to see, oh, wow, okay, there's something here. Sleep is important. I can be a high performer and prioritize sleep.
For people who like to be in control, or who like to think they're in control of their lives, sleep is a bit of an oxymoron because you actually have to surrender and let go in order to sleep. And yet some people try to apply the same things that they use to achieve things in life the rest of the time to sleep. All right, now it's time to sleep. Sleep deep, sleep fast, sleep on point, and then they just it doesn't work so well. So can you talk a little bit about the rhythms and how you see that for somebody who likes to be in control? How do they need to relate to sleep?
Absolutely. This is one of the most common patterns we see at Sleep Science Academy. Sleep's the one thing that the harder you try out, the worse it gets. Because like you mentioned, it's not something you can force and control. You actually have to surrender to it. And so usually people that are sort of control freaks or perfectionists tend to have more sleep issues. At least we see that at our academy. So perfectionism and treating it like a problem that needs to be solved. Sleep's a result. It's not a problem. So understanding that if you're somebody who's, you have that personality, or maybe you're type A, you like things to be neat a certain way, that approach to sleep is actually completely the thing that is probably getting in the way from you getting peaceful sleep. So being able to shift into a place of acceptance, of allowing, of surrendering, that takes practice. That's especially for someone that's a high performer that likes to be in control, that has that high sort of intensity. And it doesn't start at the end of the day. That's a big, key here. Rest actually happens throughout the day. And mental rest, emotional rest, spiritual rest, all these types of rest are so important. Because if we're not resting throughout our day, then our mind race. And then we try to control something that can't be controlled, which leads us to not being able to fall or stay asleep. So it is a practice, and I'm sure we're going to get into some of the practices for how people can connect to this. But it's really important for people to understand that.
So when you say rest during the day, do you mean like our brains, most of us don't know how to just shut our brains off. Like, okay, there's no on off switch,
Wouldn't that be nice?
And pretty much whenever we're awake, our brains are doing something, right?
That's right.
So what does rest mean in that context?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different types of rests. So people like to clump rest and sleep together. They really need to be separate. Because when you're asleep, you're not conscious. But when you rest, you can be conscious. And there's different types of rest. Mental rest is one of the biggest things that people need that they don't give themselves. And especially if you're someone that has you're problem solving all day, whether you're a mom or a top performer or running a corporation, we're constantly during the day, we're solving problems, and we go from one problem to the next, to the next, to the next. And there's never any mental rest. And some people think they're giving their mental rest because they're checking their phone or their social media or something. But there needs to be space throughout your day. It doesn't have to be long, because people say, oh my gosh, you're telling me I need space. It can be 5 minutes just to allow your mind to slow down, to connect to your body. Most of us live most of the time in our heads problem solving. So this could look like a breathing practice. This could look like doing something creative. This could look like moving your body even for 5 minutes. It could look like looking actually at a beautiful landscape, and it doesn't have to be out your window. It could just be a picture on the wall. Literally just staring at a picture of nature can bring the mind, it can slow the mind down. And that's really the purpose of mental rest. If we're not taking these mental rests throughout the day, you can bet that your mind is going to continually be active. And it's not like a light switch. It would be nice if it was. It'd be nice if it was like a browser that we could just kind of close all the browsers out, but that's not how it works. And we can't expect it to do that at the end of the day. So we need to do it throughout the day.
I've been experimenting recently with what's called the Pomodoro technique. Like every 25 minutes, I set a timer for 25 minutes during the workday, and then I'll get up and dance for a song. And then I go back and do 25 minutes. And I just dance around. I love to dance. I just dance around in my office, and rock out for a song. And then I come back, and it's interesting. Sometimes it's frustrating if I'm really in a groove with a work project.
Yes.
But what I find is that even if it's frustrating, I'm going to come back like really excited to dive in because that frustration built some charge, right? Versus
100%.
Getting drained and sort of stumbling along. And of course, that's not the kind of rest it doesn't look anything like sleep. But I think that it's part of what creates balance that helps the brain learn how to disengage from its rigid patterns, which is part of how we can let go when the time comes to sleep.
100%. And that's a great example of something. I'm glad that you brought that up. Music is another aspect. Listening to a song usually a song's about 5 minutes. So that's a perfect to have a soundtrack to your day. And it really does make a huge difference. It's for people listening to this, when you try it and you experience it, it's like, wow, you feel so much more energized, so much more rested mentally. and you're able to accomplish more actually. But it does take some discipline, and it takes being open to experimenting with these, types of sort of non-traditional things, right?
Yeah. Devin, what is the brain doing when we're asleep? And why is that important?
Yes, the brain actually in some stages of sleep is more active, or just as active as during the day. So different stages of sleep, different things happen in the brain. But one of the most amazing things that happen is the lymph system. It's like the lymph system for the brain. And you can think of the lymph system being activated. It washes out the beta amyloid, the tau, the plaque that builds up, creates Alzheimer's and dementia, which now there's a lot of studies that show when we aren't prioritizing sleep and we aren't prioritizing getting into quality sleep, these deeper stages of sleep, delta and REM sleep, the lymph system isn't able to efficiently clear out the beta amyloid, the plaque, all the tau, the things that build up, the toxins essentially on our brain. So when we're talking from a cognitive standpoint, that's what happens throughout the night. And we're going through these different stages of sleep. It's amazing. If you went to a sleep lab and got hooked up, it's like a symphony in the brain. There's things that are just taking place. It's amazing. The brain is definitely, there's so much happening. And also from an emotional standpoint, we're working through these, that's why we dream, these traumas, these things that we didn't have time to deal with, or we didn't really maybe have the capacity to deal with. That's when, the brain is processing all of that material so that we can wake up and feel refreshed and restored.
Yeah. I've got a Fitbit watch, and it gives me, sleep score and tracks various things about my sleep. I don't know how accurately, but one of the things it says is how much time I spend in deep sleep and how much time I spent in REM sleep the previous night. I used to have an Oura ring, which does a similar thing. Two questions for you. One is, what do you think about these wearable devices? Are they actually accurate and useful? And number two, what is deep sleep and REM sleep specifically?
Yes.
You use the phrase delta, which I think is also another word for deep sleep, essentially. Can you explain what these terms mean and what happens in them?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, sleep trackers, I think it's amazing because you can't master or even manage something that you're not measuring. So having any type of sleep tracker now, whether or not they're accurate, that's a totally different conversation. Mm-hmm. Some devices are more accurate than others. We at Sleep Science Academy, we do use the Oura Ring because that seems to be the most consistent and accurate device for sleep specifically. Now, it's not something that you have to constantly measure for the rest of your life, but having if you're looking to improve something, measuring it is critical because then you could see, I did this and that's how it affected my sleep. And whether or not it's 100% accurate, it really doesn't matter because what you're looking for is over time. Mm-hmm. And the inconsistencies over time, let's say it's 80% accurate. Mm-hmm. It's going to tell a story. Data tells a story. And you could say, okay, on the nights that I had 1 glass of red wine versus 2, wow, I actually slept better. Mm-hmm. Right? So you can start to sort of draw conclusions to your behaviors during the day and how that affects your sleep at night. I think it's really important, but it's not something that you need to obsess over. Sometimes people get into this, oh my God, I didn't get enough deep sleep or not. And then they're more stressed about their sleep. And that's the opposite of what these devices should be doing. So if you find yourself doing that, just know that that's not useful. And that's something that you're wanting to let go of and maybe take a break from the tracking for a bit.
If it's not bringing you peace and helping you make good choices, then it's not serving you. But if it's helping you make good choices, then it really is, right? And I think that measuring thing is fascinating because, I know since I started tracking with my Fitbit, I do more exercise during the day too. And I've been known to stand there in the living room running in place till I get to my 10,000 steps and I'm close late at night. I'm like, I want to get that badge.
Yeah, it's motivating. It's motivating. Yeah. And it supports positive change, which is really what we're talking about. Right. And in talking about the different stages of sleep, this is really important. So the first sort of quarter of the night, I like to break it up in 4 quarters. The first quarter of the night, that's when we get most of our deep restorative sleep or delta sleep. Delta sleep meaning our brain's in a delta state.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you can think of your body is repairing and recovering. It's this stage of sleep that our body temperature really drops. Everything is sort of in, you think of it as, I like to say, the trash men come out and start cleaning up the damaged cancerous cells, which we all have cancer in our bodies, damaged cells. It's during this stage that the body's identifying these cells and it's clearing them out. It's cleaning the system, right?
Like street sweepers that come when the parking's closed on the side of the road. Yeah.
That's it. And that happens in the first quarter of the night, which is really important. And I'll tell you why, because most people, they do not prioritize sleep. So they push that sleep later.
Yeah.
And then in the fourth quarter, which is when we are waking up, that's when we're getting most of the REM sleep, which stands for rapid eye movement. And you can think of that stage of sleep, that's when we're dreaming. That's our bodies are actually paralyzed during this state. Our eyes are rapid eye movement because our eyes are moving back and forth. But that's when we're in the dream state. And there's a lot of different theories as far as why we dream. So depending, I'm not a dream expert by any means, but I know for me and my experience in working with thousands of people at this point that have sleep issues and talking about sleep at any party I'm at, dreaming is when we are working through emotions. We're working through all of the things that are, and it's an important stage of sleep for the brain. I mean, that's where short-term memory gets shuttled to long-term storage. The brain is sort of processing things, learning. If you sacrifice REM sleep, you're not able to remember as much. Your learning, your retention isn't as accurate. And there's a lot of studies to support that. So that happens mostly during the fourth quarter of the night. And that's, again, most people they go to bed too late and then they wake up too early. So they're missing these two important stages of sleep and also doing things, unfortunately, that get in the way of those important stages of sleep, which I'm sure we're going to talk about today.
So I sometimes think that, at least for my body, sleep's a little bit like a train, and it leaves at a certain time. And if you miss the train, there's some follow-up vehicles that come along, but they're not as good.
Yes.
Do you think that having a consistent bedtime is important? And then some people say that actually having a consistent wake-up time is maybe even more important because then your body will calibrate. What's your take on bedtimes and wake-up times?
Yeah, in my experience, the more important is the wake-up time. If you can have a consistent bedtime, that also helps because the body does love rhythm and routine. Now, most of us are a little bit out of rhythm with our natural biorhythms because of the lighting in our homes, because we're disconnected from the biorhythms of the earth, because we wear shoes. So doing things like getting natural light first thing in the morning or watching a sunset as much as you can, and if you're in an area that you can do that, that actually helps sync the natural biorhythms of the body. And the body is intelligent. There's an intelligence to the system. It knows when it needs sleep. And if you start to be in tune with that, it'll kind of tell you, hey, this is your optimal bedtime. There is something called chronotypes, which we come into the world with a unique sort of chronotype, which is when some people you can think of as like night owls or morning larks. Now there's a bunch more that people have come up with all kinds of animals for this. But at the end of the day, consistent going to bed at the same time, waking up at the same time, that absolutely will help with your circadian clock being synced, as well as lighting and temperature are other things that play into that.
I've always found it fascinating that when I go camping, I get tired and I go to bed like way earlier because I'm so aware of it being dark. And that there's not a lot to do when it's dark, maybe sit around a campfire, right. But I'll be going to bed by 9 or something. Whereas if otherwise I could stay up later. I find that intriguing, and it connects to what you're saying about the rhythms of the earth and how, in some ways, the modern industrialized world has created an artificial experience of time and energy.
Yes,
that it can actually take us away from our natural connection to the rhythms of life itself.
They did, Ocean. There's a fascinating study they did a couple of years ago, I believe at University of Colorado, where they took people that had sleep issues and they brought them camping. And it was a very high percentage. I don't know off the top of my head what percentage it was at this point, but it was very high. Those people didn't have sleep issues when they came back and after a couple of days of. And there's a couple of reasons for that, is what you just mentioned, but also having a fire, looking at that orange hue, that helps the production of melatonin. And then again, breathing fresh air, being connected to the biorhythm of the earth, sounds kind of hippie-ish, but it's a real science, and it makes a big difference with helping us, as well as obviously you don't have Netflix. When you're camping, you don't have the TV shows, you don't have all that artificial lighting. All of that can support sleep. So camping is a great solution for people that struggle with their sleep.
Oh, I didn't even know. Let's talk about food. Food Revolution Network, we're advocating for healthy, ethical, and sustainable food for all. And part of what we want to talk with you about is how nutrition affects sleep. So tell us a little bit about sort of what's wrong with the modern industrialized diet, how that's impacting our sleep patterns and experience, and what should we be eating or drinking to make things better?
Yeah, so this is a big one for sure, because when you're eating processed foods, mainly unfortunately what most people eat, when you're eating foods that have pesticides, the glyphosate, all the things, it disturbs our microbiome. There's a lot of studies that show microbiome is connected to everything, including sleep, melatonin production, all of these things. So anything that's going to support your microbiome, obviously clean foods are incredibly important. And that, I think a bio-individual approach is best. You have to experiment with which foods work best for your unique system. But at the end of the day, eating quality food is what's most important. And then for sleep, when you eat food is also important. So I want to touch on this because it's not just what you eat, it's when you eat it. Because this is the big thing that people don't understand. Our bodies need time to digest. Digestion takes time, takes a lot of energy. If we eat too close to bedtime, rather than getting into that deeper stage of sleep that we mentioned earlier, the delta stage, which is so important for our body repair, blood is going to our stomachs to digest the food that we ate, no matter what type of food it was. And that's not what we want. We don't want energy going to the stomach. We don't want blood going to the stomach. We want it going other places to clean out all the damaged cells and repairing the body. So going to, having a 3 to 4 hour fasting window before you go to sleep will absolutely increase your lifespan, because it's going to increase the depth and quality of that important stage of sleep.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, this is a challenge for most people, including myself. And there are many nights when I do not adhere to this very important thing, even though I know. So it does take discipline and it does take practice. But it's really important to mention that. Sugar, the big ones that kill sleep are sugar, caffeine, and alcohol. And these, so we can talk about why, and these are, so caffeine, there's caffeine, most abused drug, right? It's the upper. So there's something that builds up in our mind and body called adenosine. It builds up this sleep pressure, and caffeine unfortunately blocks that. Caffeine it has a half-life of about 6 hours, so it's in your system for 12 hours, blocking this adenosine that needs to build up, that creates the sleep pressure, right? So most people are drinking too much caffeine at the wrong times. Heightened sense of energy also increases cortisol, which is more stress. And then they wonder why they're not able to wind down towards the end of the night.
Yeah.
So that's a big one. So even just having your coffee, waiting an hour so that your cortisol levels go down before having that cup of coffee, and also drinking, at least a big glass of water, because we lose about 1 liter of water through respiration and sweat through the night. That would help start your day to be able to wind your day down at the end of the night.
So drinking water first thing in the morning. Really?
So simple. And wait to have
not
your
have
caffeine.
coffee for at least an hour after you get up, and then obviously don't have it late in the day. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. Real simple. It's not rocket science.
Alcohol, a lot of people think it helps them relax, but you're saying that it's not good for sleep.
It's not. Unfortunately not. It is, so it can act as a sedative, but what it does, first and foremost, alcohol is a toxin, and it heats the body up. And so we want our body temperature well, it needs to drop 2 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit for sleep to happen. And so when the body is being heated up, you might, kind of be able to fall asleep faster, and it can help you do that, but you're not going to stay asleep. And also you're being dehydrated, which you're already losing a lot of. Again, you're sweating, you're breathing, you're losing a lot of water. You're not getting any water for 7 to 8 hours. So the last thing you want to do before you go to sleep is do something that's going to dehydrate you more.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So, interesting, as you were talking about sugar and alcohol and caffeine, I was thinking, well, those along with nicotine are kind of the big four legal drugs in the modern world. And then we got another one that's coming along that's legal in some places, which is cannabis, which some people take for sleep, various specific forms, right? And then there's CBD, which is a little different than THC, all kinds of different cannabinoids. I'm curious your take. Some people say, don't do it, it'll destroy your REM sleep. Other people say, oh no, it helps people sleep and that's all good. What's your take?
I think it like anything, in moderation, it depends on the quality, depends on how you're using it, when you're using it, and the type. So it depends. I think it's a great medicine. It's a better alternative than some of the sleeping medication that people take, but it's still a Band-Aid. You really want to address the underlying psychological and physiological reasons why you feel the need that you need to take this in the first place in order to sleep. There are studies that do show that it doesn't allow the body to get into that very important stage of REM. But again, it depends. It depends on the quality. It depends on how much you're using, when you're using, your biochemistry, why you're using it. So all of those are important factors to kind of consider rather than just giving a blank statement. I think it's important for people to understand that.
Is it important to get enough tryptophan? Is that what are some of the key nutrients that support the body's production of melatonin? And what are some of the plant-based foods we should be focusing on if we want to optimize sleep health?
So one interesting thing that I've read is tart cherries. A shot of tart cherry juice can help because it ties in natural melatonin. And melatonin is a hormone, right? So our body naturally produces melatonin. I'm not a big fan of people supplementing with melatonin. That's a question I often get asked, is what do you think about melatonin? Melatonin is one of those things that your body will naturally produce when you're removing the barriers for your body to produce it. And the light, there's myopsin cells in our eyes that trigger the sort of melatonin faucet to turn on. So again, making sure that you're getting the optimal light at optimal times will help with the natural melatonin production. Now there are foods, that you could eat that sort of support that. Like I mentioned, tart cherry juice, the tryptophan. People say, Thanksgiving's coming up. You eat the turkey, high in tryptophan, right? I think, foods can play a role, but I like to just keep it really simple for people. What's good for your health is going to be good for your sleep. So eating certain, sleep-rich, sleep foods, it's going to have a very minimal impact versus making sure that you're avoiding the things that actually disturb sleep. That's what's more important, is making sure that you're reducing your sugar, your alcohol, your caffeine, versus, hey, I'm going to eat this tart cherry juice or this kiwi or some of these other foods that have been shown to support sleep. It's more so what you're not doing than what you're doing, if that makes sense, Ocean.
Yeah, absolutely. What about, I guess this is up to individual user experience, but some people find that they shouldn't drink anything within a few hours of bedtime because then they're going to have to pee in the middle of the night and that's going to wake them up. Sleep. Is that a common dynamic?
It is a very common dynamic, and especially for men as they get older, this is a big thing. So front loading your hydration, so drinking more during the morning and the early afternoon, and then you want to start to taper it off. The challenge is, we actually wake up after every sleep cycle, we're just not conscious most of the time. So I always tell people it's not a huge deal if you wake up and have to use the restroom. But if your mind starts racing, then, and you're up for hours or an hour even, then that can become a pattern and an issue that you want to really start to focus on. So even just if you wake up for 5 minutes to use the restroom and then you go back to sleep and you're able to get back to sleep, not a big deal. That being said, you want to do things that limit the chances of that happening, because getting more consistent sleep throughout the night is obviously what we're shooting for.
Yeah, thank you. So the mind racing is obviously a big thing for a lot of people. I find that there's times when I'm really confident, I'm just like, I'm going to sleep. And then it's just boom, and I'm out and I wake up 8 hours later. But there's other times when my mind starts buzzing, and actually the fear of not sleeping is one of the primary things that can interfere with sleep.
Yes.
What are some of the practices that can be helpful for people to even distract their mind from its obsessions, or to settle it so that we can actually let go?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I found to be very helpful is implementing what we call a bed buffer. And this is between a buffer between your day and your night, a clean buffer. Because during the day, that's when our minds are going, problem solving, trying to figure things out. And if there's not a clean sort of stop to that, and that carries over into the night, then you can bet your mind is going to continue to rev. I call it a mind rev. Journaling or writing out your thoughts can be very, very helpful for people, because our brain goes a lot faster than our hands. So it starts to slow the mind down. But even mindfulness practices are a consistent mindfulness practice is extremely, extremely helpful for a busy, racing mind. Literally, that's training your mind to see your thoughts, witness your thoughts, experience them, let them go, have the thoughts come in, not get attached to them. I mean, that's a whole practice. That practice, when done consistently, yields incredible results. And there's a lot of science that actually supports that with sleep. But again, it's knowing yourself. If you ever feel like you're putting sleep on a pedestal, that can be a bit dangerous too, because it creates this expectation, right? That I need to sleep. And that can be enough to create some hyperarousal in the mind and body, which then the mind starts racing. Well, if I don't sleep, then I'm not going to wake up for this interview tomorrow and be refreshed and sharp, and right? And then it revs the mind more. So one of the best practices, if you notice that your mind is busy, is first and foremost, remove yourself from the bed and bedroom, because you don't want to anchor that with your bed and bedroom, a busy racing mind. And then do something that allows the mind to slow down. That could be something boring, like reading a boring book. That could be some mindfulness practice, some breathing, some stretching, a puzzle. Anything that's going to allow your body to get back into the parasympathetic, but you're not doing that so that you can sleep. Very important distinction. You're just doing it to do it. Because again, we can't force or control sleep. So if in our heads we're thinking, well, I'm going to do this to slow my brain down so that I can sleep, let it go.
Yeah, and right, absolutely. That becomes the next thing. I remember Ram Dass, the spiritual teacher, saying, the biggest traps in meditation are, it's working and it's not working. The
well
moment
said.
You think that, you're no longer meditating.
I mean, it's well said. I mean, the practice of acceptance has been one of the most powerful tools and most surprising tools that I've discovered in my work for people. And, I call it embodied acceptance, because it's a feeling that is embodied, not just intellectualized. Like, I'm accepting this. And when people can practice that total release, surrender, acceptance, the body knows, again, the intelligence comes back online, and the mind slows down, and the body just sleeps. And that takes practice, right? Especially for people that are control freaks, perfectionists, this type of person, which is incredible in certain aspects of life, but then when it comes to sleep, it's the polar opposite. So the practice of acceptance, and it is a practice, and it does take practice to practice acceptance.
One of the things I have found really effective for me when I don't struggle to sleep that often, but it happens sometimes, is I will take 3 deep breaths for each chakra, and just imagining peace there. And if I can just focus my mind there, I rarely get past the 3rd or 4th chakra out of the 7, and then I'm asleep. And if I happen to wake up at some later point in the night, I remember where I left off, interestingly, and I pick up there.
That's amazing.
And that practice, it's so interesting because the times when I have the hardest time sleeping are literally I can't do it because my
Mm.
mind is so wound up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can't do it because my mind thinks this is how I get to sleep. I have to do it because what I tell myself is, if you make it through all 7 chakras, you'll feel better.
There you
So
go.
I'm actually trying to make it through. It's like turning the doorknob the wrong way when you're trying to open a door or a keyhole, the wrong way. Sometimes you got to do that, and then you come back, and it joggles things loose that were stuck. So there's something about actually telling my mind that I'm trying to make it through this practice.
Mm.
And another thing I'll sometimes do is a meditation, where like Tara Brach leads these wonderful meditations, and
She's wonderful. Yeah.
and I'm trying to make it through, but I'm doing it on my back with the lights out, and I rarely make it through. But if I do, wow, I'm feeling really good.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And so knowing yourself too, it's really important for people to understand and know themselves, and kind of know where on the spectrum, how sort of revved you are. And certain strategies or things work better for depending on where you are on that spectrum. So if you're really revved up and your mind's really going, you're trying to, figure out a big business problem or a relationship issue or whatever it is that has this mind trying to fix it and it's going, there might be better things to do during if you're further on that spectrum than if you're further down the spectrum. Mm-hmm. So like distraction, that's another there's a place for that. Because distracting, you're not really in a place of acceptance. You're focusing on something else, right? Which can be useful to move you down the spectrum, where then maybe you can get to a place where you can surrender, which is accept whether or not you go back to sleep or not. And that's a true place of acceptance when you can get to that place and embody it. And that takes courage and practice. But distraction techniques can be very, very helpful. Like focusing on the breath is one of the easiest ones I think that people find effective. And we call it, we have this thing called bed breathing, where you envision your bed and you breathe around the bed. And it's a version of what the Navy SEALs do, box breathing. And that just, again, helps people get back into their body and out of their head. Because that's when you're in your head, you're dead, right? You're trying to solve it. And that's where that mental struggle. So it is a bit paradoxical. There's a lot of things which is why I love helping people with their sleep. There's a lot of things that seem like they would help sleep that actually don't. And sleep is a great teacher. It's an amazing teacher. It can be, if you're sleeping well, oftentimes that's a reflection of your life, that your life is balanced and you're focusing on those important areas. If you're not, then usually that's just a sign that there's something in your life, maybe it's your diet, your relationships, your spirituality, your social connection, that's something needs attention.
Yeah.
And so that's where the gift of disturbed sleep actually can come out.
Yeah, I've had a few times that I was up in the night wrestling with something, and I had a breakthrough because my consciousness needed to work something through, right? So
yes,
there are those times. But there's also the times when there's absolutely nothing creative happening, when it's recycling the exact same thoughts I've thought 1,000 times before. And, the mind gets very interested in itself, but some part of me can just have a witness. It's like, am I thinking anything new? Am I feeling anything new? Or is this 100% recycled? And if it's 100% recycled, then I can pretty much say, okay, there's probably nothing good going to come out of this. Let's try a new approach, right? Let's come from a fresh angle, not just stay worrying.
That's a beautiful insight.
Yeah.
Yeah, really powerful insight.
Mia asked, what if you have a sleep apnea, but you can't use a CPAP machine? Is there anything you can do to counter the ill effects of a lifetime of getting less oxygen, like hyperbaric oxygen chamber therapy? Might that help?
Yeah, that's a great question. So anything that's going to produce more oxygen in your blood would be beneficial, because sleep apnea obviously is you're having stop breathing events throughout the night, and that does put a strain and stress on the body. So there are certain breathing techniques. There's a gentleman named Wim Hof who teaches certain Yes, he's a very cool guy. But his breathing technique can help oxygenate the body, which essentially is you're breathing in very deep in through your mouth. I'm not going to teach this right now, but look up Wim Hof technique.
WIMHOF, I believe. Yeah.
Yes.
And
great teacher.
He has an app, the Wim Hof app, where he walks you through his practice. Really cool. I do that regularly, and I'm holding my breath for like 4.5 minutes now, which is
Wow.
pretty cool.
Well, take it from Ocean, and it works. Because if you can hold your breath for that long, then your body has a lot of oxygen in it.
Yeah, right. It's really cool.
Hyperbaric chamber for sure. That can absolutely help. It's one of those things. Anything that's good exercise, anything that's going to create more oxygen in your body, having a healthy alkaline system will also allow that, more oxygen in the body. Yeah. So, but there is a device, and I'm trying to remember I'm not sure how severe her, apnea is, but there's a device that actually sits on the tongue, and if sometimes people have sleep apnea because the tongue slips back and causes a stop breathing event. And there's a muscle underneath the tongue called myoglossus muscle. And there's a device that you can train this muscle through e-stim, essentially. So you put this mouthpiece in, and that might be something to explore. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It'll come to me. If not, I'll make sure Ocean has it to send out to you. But that would be something that I would explore as well.
What do you think about CPAP machines for people who do benefit from them? Do you see that?
Yeah, they're very important. I mean, unfortunately it's one of the least compliant devices, medical devices, because most people don't like to have this thing on their face. Most people don't realize the reason that they have sleep apnea in the first place is because they're carrying around too much weight. They're overweight. Now, there are different types of sleep apnea. You could be a skinny, healthy, fit guy and still have sleep apnea because of the structure of your jaw, or because of, you have a weak myoglossus muscle that slides back. So there's different types of sleep apnea. But in most people's cases, if they just were able to maintain a healthy weight, oftentimes they don't even need a CPAP. Now, if you're someone that needs it, it's very important that you use it because it does put stress on the heart. These stop breathing events throughout the night, oxygen is the number one thing we need for sustaining life. And anything that's going to get in the way of that, we want to make sure that we counter that with a device.
Got it. Thank you. Lynn said, according to my Apple Watch, I'm only getting maybe 15 minutes once or twice a night of deep sleep. I know the watches are not absolute, but if they are anywhere near close, I don't think 15 minutes is enough time for my brain to clean out the junk. What can I do to increase my time in deep sleep? I average 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep per night.
Lynn, I used to actually struggle with deep sleep myself when I started to measure my sleep. I thought I was sleeping really well. And again, you don't want to put too much emphasis on numbers coming from a device. They're not 100% accurate. So I want to throw that caveat. But what I mentioned earlier in this conversation with Ocean around eating too close to bedtime, I found that was a big factor for me when I really discovered that and applied it consistently. It helped. Also doing things that will bring your body temperature down. So this could be actually taking a hot shower, because what a hot shower does is it heats the body up and then actually drops the core body temperature. And that helps, induce deeper quality sleep, specifically the delta deep sleep stage. Some other things I would look into. There are a number of things to experiment with, from supplements that can help, like glycine, that can help drop the body temperature. But at the end of the day, don't stress about it. The important thing is that you're getting sleep, and just start to experiment with different things consistently and just see if it changes that number. That's how I was able to resolve mine, is I just started to experiment with different things, as well as gut health. That's a big one for deep sleep. If you clean up your diet and restore your gut health, your body will get more deep sleep. So those are some ideas.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Will said, ever since the pandemic, my sleep's been thrown off. The main thing I can think of is that my stress levels were higher and my routine was and still is quite different. How does a change of routine and increased stress levels impact my sleep? And what can I try to do about this? Yeah,
this was still is most people's challenge. On top of everything in life, then we had the whole pandemic to throw in an additional kicker. So I would really look at, what ways do you manage your stress currently? How do you currently manage stress? Do you have support? Are you speaking to a psychologist or a coach about, the stress in your life? Are you using alcohol or drugs, or, unhealthy ways of managing stress. So looking at, well, one, where can I get support? Two, what's creating the most stress in your life, right? And how can you get support to address whatever is creating the most stress in your life? So that could be your finances, that could be your relationship. I'm not sure what it is for you, but really just taking ownership of whatever that thing is, and then getting support. I mean, we all need support. Trying to do it by yourself is often, it's takes a lot longer, and it's you can just get support. That's what I would say.
Got it. Thank you. Can you speak to the role of exercise in sleep, and particularly morning exercise? Do you think that's important?
Very important. Very important. The reason exercise is very important to sleep is exercise is a way of relieving stress from the mind and body. And now if we exercise too late in the day, it actually heats the body up, which then doesn't allow the body, again, to drop into the deeper stages of sleep. So morning exercise, especially if it's outside, you're getting that light first thing in the morning, which is going to help sync that circadian rhythm. And then you're just optimizing your whole system, from your circulation, you're just anything that's going to move static energy, which is exactly what exercise does, and get you out of your head and into your body, is going to be helpful for sleep. Now, there's so many different types of exercise. So depending on your age, your gender, your goals, you want to make sure that you're not overstressing your body with the form of exercise, but you don't want to understress it either. So this does take a little experimentation, but moving your body, blanket statement, absolutely is going to support sleep. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's almost like it's the contrasts that set each other up, right? When we're more active in the day, we're able to drop deeper at night. And recently I went backpacking, and boy, did I sleep well that night. My body was exhausted. Of course, you get too far and you're in pain because your muscles are in spasm, and then you don't sleep well. But there's a good balance there, of course.
Exactly.
But,
yeah. Moving is important.
Yeah. You touched on social connection earlier, but there is an emotional side to sleep, isn't there? When our hearts are at peace, or if we feel connected, it's easier to sleep better. Can you talk about that a little bit, and how does heartbreak and loneliness impact sleep, and what are some practices for holding that?
Yeah, so this is not just my opinion. There's a lot of studies that support this, that when we are lonely, we have issues sleeping. And so social connection, filling up your social bucket, is so important. And often I feel like a lot of times today we are so disconnected because of technology and just because of the communities that we live in, the places that we live in. So really checking in and being honest with yourself, first and foremost, what is that bucket being filled? And if it's not, how can I fill that bucket? Who can I reach out to, or what can I get involved in, so that I can start to feel a sense of community and connection? Because that's the remedy, is understanding, well, first and foremost, what needs to change, and then how can you change it? And that could be reaching out to people. Again, that could be maybe moving to a different community where you feel more connected and you feel like there's a sense of deeper connection with where you live. But the internet, this is not real connection. I mean, to some aspect, but really getting back into being with people, even in a shop, a coffee shop. These little micro interactions, they fill up the connection bucket that is so often, I find, depleted for so many people. So knowing, do you need more connection, or sometimes maybe people have too much connection, and knowing, okay, I need to create the space to, just connect with myself. That's really important as well. If everyone all day is needing you, and you're talking to people and dealing with clients, and then you have the kids, and everyone's, needing you, creating the boundaries and the space to just be with yourself and connect with yourself can be also tremendously beneficial for sleep.
Yeah, that's a profound one. Certainly is for me what I call self-loyalty, coming first, because it's so easy to get caught up in, and it's an interesting dynamic. We sometimes we are taking care of everyone else first. And actually, at some subconscious level, we believe that when everyone else is okay, then they'll love us and we'll be okay. So
That's
it's a
right,
sort of
yeah.
vicarious, it's a covert way of trying to get love, is to make sure that everyone else is loving by taking care of them. And
Hmm.
we can skip all of the middle people and just focus on ourselves sometimes and say, okay, I'm going to love me first. Put your own oxygen mask on first sometimes, like self-care, self-love, and then from there let yourself be an overflowing cup that gives, rather than a depleted one that's hoping that somebody else will give to you if you give to them enough. So that's an interesting dynamic that I've been practicing in my own life, and it is connected to sleep, because my biggest troubles, my most sleepless nights of my life have been nights when I was struggling with angst and emotional distress and loneliness and heartbreak. And often the
Yes.
cure for that isn't changing other people's behavior, it's centering in myself.
Well said. Well said. Yeah. And there's actually a mindfulness practice that I love called metta, where you're actually sending you're
Not to be
sending.
confused with Facebook. Okay, go on.
Yes, definitely not to be confused with Facebook. But yeah, the practice of metta is an amazing one for connecting back to your heart and yourself. I find in my own personal experience, as well as for clients, that can be tremendous. But yeah, that's a really important distinction that you just shared there, Ocean. Well
Yeah.
said.
Thank you. Devin, anything else you want to bring in here that we haven't covered yet today?
Well, I'll just leave people with a super tangible 3-2-1 sleep. So 3 hours before bed, you stop eating. 2 hours before bed, no work to allow the mind to start to simmer down from the day. And then 1 hour before bed, just start something, your bedtime ritual, which hopefully doesn't involve Netflix, although sometimes it can. Something that's simple, that allows the body and mind to just relax. If you practice 3-2-1 sleep consistently and you wake up and go to bed at the same time, as far as from a sleep hygiene standpoint, the quality of your sleep will definitely increase.
We've been talking with Devin Burke, sleep coach and founder of Sleep Science Academy, a best-selling author, and an advocate for all of us having restorative sleep that helps us to heal and live beautiful, vibrant lives. Devin, it's been such a pleasure sharing this time with you, and we thank you for your work and your research, your advocacy, and for helping us all to create more fulfilling existence on this planet.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Ocean. And right back at you.
Thank you. When it comes to cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes, heart disease, and other chronic illness, what really matters isn't how many books you read, how many webinars you attend, or how much you know. What really matters at the end of the day is what you eat and how you live. The science has given us what we need to know. Now it's time for action. It's time to implement and optimize your healthy lifestyle. It's time to get results. It's time to say goodbye to confusion and hello to clarity. It's time to say goodbye to bad habits and hello to good ones. It's time to fall in love with foods that love you back. It's time to join a community that will support you in achieving your goals. It's time for Whole Life Club.